Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and I am back with an episode of Rudy's Common Sense. Oh my goodness, there probably was never an episode of Common Sense where common sense was needed more than an application to the speech from hell. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say the speech from hell? We know that Hunter's hard drive has been described as the hard drive from hell by the great Miranda Devine. But this was the speech from hell by Biden. It would have been called the speech from hell even without the background. But he wanted us to call it the speech from hell because he gave us a background that looks like kind of the last ring of Dante's Inferno. Now, if you're not familiar with Dante, the great Italian poet who invented the Italian language, by the way, you might be familiar with opera. How about Gounod's Faust and Mephistopheles, or Berlioz's The Damnation of Faust, or Goethe's own Faust, which was a great German play. Mephistopheles was Satan. And constantly, when he appeared to sing his arias or make his monologues, there was a red background looking like blood, exactly what he had behind him, and then a lot of black kind of worked into it to give you the sense of evil and foreboding and fear. Precisely the background used by the communists. Precisely the background used by the Nazis. Not the background used by Franklin Roosevelt or Harry Truman or Dwight Eisenhower or John Kennedy or Ronald Reagan. Wasn't it an American flag? Or Donald Trump? Or even, I think, Barack Obama, who might have been entitled to such a background, was smart enough not to have one. My goodness, whoever produced that went really far to give it a satanic image. Well, it lived up to its billing because it was, I believe, and I'd be very happy if you contradicted me and went to Rudy's CS.com and gave me the citation or the place to look for it. I don't ever remember an American president beginning a campaign for the midterm elections or any elections where his sole focus was attacking his own people. Oh, many times they attack their opponent. Sometimes they attack the Congress. Sometimes they attack the president, depending on where they are. But they don't attack the voters, or at least not large numbers of voters that make up large percentages of the population. Where that thought came from, who developed it, there'd be some, not me, who probably would think it was satanic. No matter how biased or prejudiced you are, do you realize the pathology in doing that? Now, many of the papers and many of the networks cleaned up the background. Like the New York Times pictures, you can't tell there's this stark blood red background and this black color and this dark foreboding kind of thing going on. But you see it, we're showing it to you right now. It was intended to frighten the living daylights out of the American people about other American people. How far is this from the president, or whatever he is, who promised to unite the American people? This is just a complete, absolute 100% contradiction of that. This is a speech intended to divide one group of Americans against another group of Americans. Almost like you want to create a political civil war. But, this is not a surprise. This is a president that throughout his campaign in 2020, as he stayed in the basement, both he himself and all of his surrogates and whatever they were constantly did things to divide the American people, the most significant of which, and in which he very much participated, including at his convention, and then I believe at his inauguration, but certainly around that time, attacked all of the American people as systemically racist. I don't know that I ever remember an American president attacking all of his own people and saying they're systemically racist. Now, let's kind of figure out what the word systemically means. It means virtually everyone. It means it adheres in the system. It's not just occasional. It's not just exceptional. In other words, they're not just a few bad apples. There are not just some Americans that are racist. Systemically means that in almost every part of America and among most Americans, which then would have to include independents and Democrats, we're racist. Now, I have many, many times rebutted that and told you that is a product of Biden's projection, because if you don't know it by now, Biden is himself a racist, has been since he entered the Senate, saying that he didn't want his children to go to school in the jungle, befriending and finding among his best friends in the Senate not only members of the Ku Klux Klan, but heads of the Ku Klux Klan. Remember, the Ku Klux Klan would kill black people? Lynch them. This was their main sort of area of terrorism. Of course, they did many other things like burn down houses and stop integration. But that didn't stop racist Joe Biden from very, very proudly announcing his friendship with them and giving them massively beneficial and nice eulogies. This is a man who just recently said that if you didn't vote for him, you weren't black. Oh, my goodness. I mean, he is, in fact, much more of a racist than the vast majority of American people. In fact, I'm not sure I know anyone that believes what he believes or says what he says. So, we see as early as that, this whole process of projection with this systemically racist comment, and also the kind of strange process of an American president attacking the people he governs as evil people, which doesn't seem to occur to him, becomes a fodder for our enemies. Was used against his Secretary of State and his assistant when they first met with the Chinese. It's been used by the Chinese constantly. It's a virulent attack on America and Americans. Of course, it's not at all disciplined by a sycophantic American social media and press, which largely ignores all of the horrible things he does to degrade our country, all the crimes that he's committed. I mean, these are beyond what any other American president has done. It occurs to me that there hasn't been a podcast we've done with Patriot Mobile where they don't fit right in. We should do a podcast on them. To fight these battles, you need allies. And we sure don't have too many allies in the corporate community. But we don't need too many when you have Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile was there with us in the fight to dignify, to save human life. It was there in the fight to save our right to defend ourselves at a time when we need it more than any other that I can remember. Think of the murders you read about every day, the old people hit in the head, the old people beaten up, the young people beaten up, the big strong people beaten up by 4 and 5 people. Part of the making us of a communist country is to destroy our economy and hit us with this unbelievable, out of control inflation that doesn't have to be. And they are putting together packages for your mobile phone so you can afford it. And when you spend that money, you'll be spending that money to save your way of life for you, for your children, for your grandchildren. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to patriotmobile.com/Rudy. patriotmobile.com/Rudy. 972-PATRIOT. And they'll work out a package for you that fits your budget. And if you are a veteran or a first responder, they're going to have plenty of special discounts because you're entitled to them. patriotmobile.com/Rudy. patriotmobile.com/Rudy. 972-PATRIOT. Before we analyze the speech, let's just define something and explain it, because it inheres in much of what the Democrats have done for 5 years, and it really has reached a point of it's so obvious that you'd have to be stupid to ignore it. They engage in quite obviously projection. In other words, they accuse their opponents of what they do. Maybe it's a way of creating a signal or a defense for them with the bought and paid for, not so much bought and paid for, but the ideologically committed state media, which is what it's become. And then they just reflect it. So, we see projection going way back to Russian collusion. The Russian collusion was totally false, and it was paid for by Hillary Clinton, and it cost bare minimum $1.1 million, and it was an attempt to frame an innocent man. How did they come up with Russian collusion? Well, they were just basically projecting what they were doing in Ukraine and Russia, and the collusion that they engaged in, including millions and millions and millions for the Clinton crime family. This is before we get to the Biden crime family. So projection, maybe it's a way of creating a smokescreen that keeps a willing media away from them, or in some cases, a completely corrupt media who's aware of it, or some who aren't, because their ideological sickness is so great. What they're trying to do now with January 6th, which also involves a great deal of projection. Who knows how much involvement Antifa, the police, the Democrats had in that. They won't give up any of their documents. They will not honestly investigate the murder of Ashley Babbitt. It's as if her life doesn't count. She's the only one who died that day in the Capitol. These inhumane, whatever they've become, maybe kind of correctly ensconced within that background that Biden has created of hell. I mean, they don't seem to care. But this is a murder with many, many questions unanswered of a human life. But I think a long time ago, Democrats have lost any real sensitivity for human life. But in any event, we get to his speech. Unifying, not political, and uplifting. Those were the words of Jean-Pierre, his mouthpiece. But a somewhat more accurate prediction was given by Miranda Devine in her article either that day or the day before, which predicted that it would be just a continuation of the accusation of semi-fascism that Trump and Trump supporters and MAGA supporters and some group of people who supported Trump, which amount to millions and millions and millions of Americans, were semi-fascists. Exactly what a semi-fascist is only exists in the disturbed mind of Joe Biden, because this could be a product either of his basic ignorance, which he's had since he was left back in the third grade, or it could be a product of his dementia. But semi-fascism, I don't know what that conveys. If you're a semi-fascist, does it mean you're a fascist on Monday but not on Tuesday? Or does it mean you're half a fascist and half not? I mean, it's a stupid expression, only allowed without tremendous ridicule, because the press and the media sucks up to this incompetent president. It's the first speech given by an American president where he begins a political campaign, that being the midterm elections of 2022, by not attacking really the political people, not attacking the candidates, not even much attacking Trump. He only mentioned him 3 times. He attacks the people. What American president attacks the people? What sensible, logical, moderately intelligent politician attacks the voters? And then doesn't get broadly criticized by the press that exists to protect us against propaganda and lies. Except this press is, has completely sucked up to him. With a blood red and black background, which was described by Jean-Pierre as going to be a non-political and uniting, is probably without any doubt, the biggest and most vicious attack by an American president on people who voted for his prior opponent than ever before in American history. It is a totally political speech. There is nothing presidential about it. The background's not presidential. The background's satanic. The United States Marines, what are they doing there? This isn't a government event. You cheat. You're going to pay for it? Or are we going to pay for it? We're going to pay for this political event where you tell people to get out and vote? Democratic? I mean, do you ever have a day in which you don't lie, Biden, or cheat, or steal? I mean, it's been 30 years of taking millions for your office. And you use the United States Marines as a political prop? I don't know. You don't make them look like United States Marines. You make them look more like the guards to the gates of hell. So now let's look at the speech, and we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we will. Not long ago, Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow, and his team fit me for my very own MyPillow. They also introduced me to their wide assortment of other incredible products, like their mattress topper, their sheets, towels, slippers, and more. Sleep is incredibly important to me, and I can assume for all of you. You can get great discounts on MyPillow products by going to mypillow.com right now. So now let's quickly take a look at the speech. Let's see what he said in his background, which if he didn't try to evoke Hades or Moscow or East Berlin or some other equally demonic or satanic place, he sure has people with terrible judgment. He begins, of course, making the usual Biden indication that he's either senile or explains why he had to cheat in law school or left back in the third grade, or that he's the dumbest man in Washington, by using "we the people." But sort of suggests that it began the Declaration of Independence. Of course, it was the Constitution, but that's a small point. I mean, he does this all the time. I mean, he couldn't recite the preamble, so can't remember his wife's name. Let's let that go. Well, I mean, we know we're living with the atrocity of a president who is incapable of carrying out the duties of president of the United States in a cabinet that is so unpatriotic and so un-American that they allow him to remain without utilizing the amendment that was presented to them as a duty if a president is incompetent. This president is incompetent. The man who he may actually think defeated him. I do. He says Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. So he begins by accusing his former opponent and all the people who supported him, who do consider themselves MAGA Republicans. That's about, if you take the phony vote seriously, is 65 million Americans. They're threatening our republic. They don't just have different views, or radically even different views. They want to bring down our republic. He never explains how. We know how he wants to bring down our republic. I can explain it to you in 3 minutes. I've never had any issue with the idea of make America great again or America first. I mean, what would be first other than America? I mean, we're not like you, Joe. China isn't first because most of us haven't gotten $31 million from China. Your party just doesn't want to recognize that you sold out to them. You then accuse Trump and the MAGA Republicans of being a threat to this country. They're not just the opposition, but they're a threat to the United States of America. What are you trying to do? Set up more criminalization, more arrests? What do you mean they're a threat? They're a different political point of view. I don't ever remember a president doing this. Then you go on to make probably one of the most false statements you've ever made, and that says a lot about you because you lie almost habitually. I'm an American president, not a president of red America or blue America, but of all America. Oh, like hell you are. You pass government changing legislation, way of life changing legislation, economic busting legislation. You support massive changes in our form of government that just serve your version of the most radical part of your party. And you do it without any Republican votes, nor do you care for Republican votes, nor do you make concessions to Republican votes. You don't pay attention to red America. The last thing you passed didn't have a single Republican vote. The stupid bill that you falsely said would attack inflation, which will create more inflation. And then the one before it that you called the infrastructure bill, except it really was human infrastructure to make America more dependent. You had a few Republican idiots who voted for that. The second one, you didn't have any Republicans. Then he says that MAGA Republicans don't respect the Constitution. They don't believe in the rule of law. Where do you come off saying that? You show me where MAGA Republicans don't respect the Constitution. I can show you where you don't, like when you crashed into my house and searched in violation of my Fourth Amendment rights, and then searched my law office in violation of the attorney-client privilege, which you and your crooked attorney general have trashed. Not just for me, but for many others. Or the way in which you've kept those January 6 people in jail for 14 or 15 months like we were the Russian gulag. Republicans didn't do that. MAGA people didn't do that. You, Joe, who's looking an awful lot like a tyrant, did that. Don't tell us that we don't respect the Constitution. You've trashed it, almost every amendment. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech. It's coming out now that your government conspired with all of the social media to shut up Republicans, to censor the evidence of massive crimes by you and your son, which was kept from the American people, which ensured your fraudulent election. You don't belong there. Forget the cheating in the votes. You don't belong there because you deliberately, along with the social media, kept from the American people your history of 30 years of crime. And you're telling us that we don't respect the Constitution or the rule of law? Your son is getting on Air Force One while you're invading Trump's home, and your son is guilty of at least 10 crimes on that hard drive, which all you need to do is pull out the papers and indict him. He was walking around with a .38 revolver, and there are pictures of him as a drug addict at the same time. That is a 10-year federal felony, and you respect the rule of law, you hypocrite? But you're a hell of a lot more than a hypocrite now. You're becoming a tyrant. You respect the rule of law, and you won't explain to us why you and your family took $31 million from China? And you're lecturing us on the rule of law? Where the hell do you get the right to do that, Joe? First of all, if you're talking about the recent decision of the Supreme Court, it lets every state choose whether or not, and to the extent to which women get to decide the issue of abortion. And what is the balance of rights between the woman and the life, however you want to define it, within her body? We let every state define that because there is no right in the Constitution unless you make it up. So there is a right to choose, except it exists in every state, and it exists based on the constitutional process that we have in the United States. I don't know what you're talking about by no right to contraception. No one has suggested overturning that decision, or if they have, they're certainly not part of the mainstream of the MAGA movement. No right to marry. I think you're talking about gay marriage, and that is the support of a lot of Republicans. I myself have conducted a gay marriage. These things that you do are disgusting for a president. They're intended to divide us. They're intended to create violence. Then you describe the January 6th people as insurrectionists. You haven't charged any of them with insurrection. I mean, you've arrested 800 of them. You kept them in jail, some of them for 16, 17 months. Only dictatorships do that. You haven't charged or proven insurrection. And very hard to do that since none of them had a gun. There's an insurrection without a gun. And then you ignore the murder of Ashley Babbitt because you people don't have a soul. And if it doesn't fit your political narrative, life is expendable. And then you say the MAGA Republicans are a clear and present danger to our democracy. No, you are. This is why this is projection. Everything you're suggesting here, you do. Threat to American democracy? No, it's not. We don't want to change American democracy. You're the one who wants to do away with the Electoral College, which creates a balance against the tyranny of the majority, which seems to me you want to create. You want to change the nature of the Supreme Court. You're the ones who want to do that. You want to change our democracy. You tried really hard to have universal mail voting without identification, which, come on, only a moron couldn't figure out was in order for you to cheat. So you would be a one-party country. Your plans for redistricting was struck down, even in Democratic New York, as grossly unconstitutional and an attempt to create a one-party state. You say this is an inflection point. I have that here. Inflection point. It is. And the inflection point is we go any further with you, and we're on an express train. We're on an express train to communism. That's where we're going, Joe. You know it. Then you say that Republicans embrace anger, chaos, and they live in the shadow of lies. Who lives in the shadow of lies, Joe? The Biden crime family, doesn't it? That hard drive that I have, 2 rooms from here. There is no family in America that has more lies than yours. There's no family that's ever been in the White House that's more criminal than yours. Like giving up an airbase 400 miles from China that someday may turn out to be just the airbase that the American president needs to defend the American people. He probably, Democrat or Republican, will curse you, Joe, while you're dead for having done that. If that isn't something that comes close to treason, I don't know what is. And if that doesn't raise the question, just how much are you compromised by China, then we've become such a weak people that we're not capable of asking such questions anymore. You got $31 million from them. You gave up an airbase, a fully functional, just modernized airbase. You gave that up, and $85 billion worth of arms, 400 miles from China, when China is threatening to displace us by 2048. We are still an America that believes in honesty and decency and respect for others. You say that, Joe. But you're not part of that America. You're part of the crooked America. You're part of the America of a public official who began at a low level selling his public office and then spent the rest of his life moving up the ladder of selling it more and more and more and more, and using even your fragile son to do that for you and putting him in contact with some of the worst criminals in the world. And then you have consistently and overwhelmingly lied about it. You're not part of that America. You're the complete contradiction of it. You say that MAGA Republicans are destroying American democracy. Boy, is that projection. You are. The whole program of your party is to destroy American democracy. You're the one who wants to change the way in which this very delicate balance we have exists. Well, this speech is a sad, sad day in America. I never thought we'd have a president like you. I feel guilt for it because I feel like I hadn't done enough to get before the American people. What they should have known about you. I know it. I know what a thoroughly dishonest, crooked man you are. I know the damage you've already done to America, which is almost irreparable. And I fear tremendously the next 2+ years with you. Believe what you're doing to Donald Trump right now is unprecedented, and it's turning America into a banana republic. I think what you've done with me is vicious, political, and aimed at destroying me because I know the most about you. You say that MAGA Republicans spread fear and lies, lies told for profit and power. Let's take one example, Joe. I'm the one who said that the hard drive was true. Your people, 51 of them, a bunch of lying pieces of scum that work for the government, said it was Russian disinformation. Who was spreading the lies, Joe? You and your sycophantic, sick supporters, or me? Who turned out to be telling the truth about that? Your people or me? Me. The hard drive was completely legitimate. Had nothing to do with Russia. You called them and they lied for you, which gives you an idea that these aren't patriots. In fact, they're people who have no regard for America, despite their service. All they have regard for is their position, their power, their standing with the Washington Post, and all the sickness that comes about when you sell your soul to Mephistopheles. That backdrop was probably really appropriate, wasn't it? Because that's where you sold your soul, Joe, somewhere. Maybe the first bribe, huh? You end with, I give you my word as a Biden. Joe, that's worth nothing. Your word as a Biden is worth nothing. The Bidens are a crime family. I spoke to the police in Delaware who tell me you're a menace in Delaware, but all you got to do is look at the hard drive, and you haven't just committed hundreds and hundreds of crimes. I mean, you're the big criminal, Joe. They're the little criminals. But most of you are. You flaunt the law. You bring in the Secret Service to get you out of it when you're in trouble. You bring in the FBI to get you out of it. You're in trouble. Your son has violated every drug law that exists while you just sit back and don't care that other people are in prison for it. Your son has violated the gun laws. You don't care if other people are in prison for it. Your son has laundered money that went to you and you don't seem to care. And you won't explain to us how these enemies of the United States gave millions to your son for your influence, and your son said that 50% went to you. You won't explain to us what that means, because it's true, isn't it? How can you give a speech like this? Do you know the damage you're doing to the moral fiber of our country and to the respect that people have for our country? It's dramatic. So American people, even those of you who aren't Trump supporters and people who consider themselves Make America Great Again or America First, which is a legitimate viewpoint. You may disagree with it, but what's wrong with wanting to make America great again? And what's wrong with putting America ahead of China? He puts China ahead of everything. What's wrong with that? Why is that a legitimate political disagreement? And explain to me exactly the damage that anybody in the Trump administration did to human freedom. I mean, people weren't arrested for political crimes under Trump. Lawyers for Hillary Clinton and the Democratic crooks, their offices weren't invaded. They weren't searched like I was. People who supported them, like Navarro supported you, weren't put in leg irons. There's nothing like that happened under Trump. This is all projection and communist tactics. Boy, do we have to reject this. So I say to all of you, stay focused on this election in 2022. It's important. We need a check and balance against him. This man is revealing more of a tyrannical and satanic spirit than I thought he had. Maybe I'm somewhat affected by the background here, but this is frightening. Never thought this would happen in America, but we're going to stop it. So you stay with me. Rudy Giuliani, CS.com. Rudy Giuliani, CS.com. Keep up with it now every week as we get to the election, and we're going to expand it and get you even more information. I'll explain that to you next week. God bless you, and God bless America.